Hi, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. My name is Brian Sheffy. This is Genealogy Adventures.
And I'm Donya Williams, and we're going to jump right in because we're a little behind schedule. So let me just add her to the screen. Hi, Anitra, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello, hello.
How are
Hi.
you? I'm so glad you're able to get in. Okay, so let me just introduce you guys to Anitra first and foremost. Anitra Louis works as a writing instructor for Western Governors University, but spends most of her time singing, karaoke, traveling, and making as many memories as she can with her friends and family. She lives in Charlotte, North Carolina with her husband Paul, her daughter Ava, and her two dogs, Lena and Bentley. So welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. Um,
Thank you so much
I
for having me.
I am probably the biggest fan of Relative Race.
And that's not an exaggeration.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, it is not. I turned Brian on the Relative Race and told him, "Hey, we gotta get somebody on the show." And because of that, not only did we have Ray and JD, Deshay was supposed to be on with you, but she had some family issues and was not able to. But next week we will actually have Dan, Tom, Tristan, and Rebecca for a special. So I'm so excited. I gotta bring that down.
It really
And
is a wonderful show.
It is. And we
and it,
want to talk to you about it.
because it really does come across that way. And for the benefit of our audience, the episode that we're having with the production team is actually going to be a special, and we're going to be airing that on Saturday. The
Right.
10th of December, 4 p.m. on our usual channels. We're not moving anywhere and still doing our regular show on Sunday. So you get a double dose of genealogy adventures next week.
Yes, yes. So I want to give you just a little bit of background right now. I want you to know that there will be people that can comment and they'll be putting stuff up. So, for example, we have someone by the name of Rhonda Harris Oliver. She says that she loves the show as well, talking about relative race. But these things will pop up and we'll be able to share that with you. But I want to get straight
Mhm.
into you. How did you find out about relative race?
It's so funny. I was in Barnes and Noble Christmas shopping and I saw an ad on Instagram that said, "Are you adopted? If so, you can be on a reality show." I thought it was fake, but I filled it out anyway. And turns out it was real. The next day, I had my interview, and then Christmas Eve, I had another interview, and then fast forward, it moved so quickly after that. But I hadn't
Wow.
heard of relative race until I filled out that form, and so it was just fate, really.
So is that
Wow.
kind of like nothing ventured, nothing gained? I'm not really sure that this is legit, but I'm just going to take a chance.
Right. I thought worst case scenario, it's a scam and I'm not really going to get hurt because I hadn't really given a lot of personal information. Best case scenario, I find my family. So
And you
Excellent.
did that.
So what was the interview process like? Because we didn't get a chance to speak to JD at all about that.
so there's a casting agent's interview first. They see if you're right for the show. And then you had to submit a video that's about 15 minutes long explaining why you want to be on the show with whoever you're going to be on the show with. And after that, they review it, the producers review it, and it was about 3 or 4 weeks before I heard something else.
Okay, and what conversation? Because I mean, this is a deeply personal show. I mean, you're putting your kind of family information out there. What kind of conversations did you have around the dinner table or the breakfast table about doing the show and what might be involved?
We filled out the form, we did the video, and then we didn't talk about it again until we heard from relative race. And I didn't tell my adopted family until after the show aired. I mean, well, the a couple of months before the show was going to air is when I told everyone because I just didn't. We weren't sure how everyone would take it because it is a very sensitive situation for my adopted family too. So I didn't want to have that kind of hanging over me going into the race and going into the show.
Okay. And for the benefit of the audience, you didn't know anything about your biological family at all. Is that correct?
That's right. The only thing that I knew, I was told when I was 7 that my parents had me when they were 16 years old and that I had a sister, but they had to give me up for adoption. So,
Cool. And you hadn't taken a DNA test at that point.
no, I hadn't.
All right. And I'm curious, have you taken a DNA test since then?
I haven't, not really. I mean, so everything, the DNA test they give you for relative race is so intricate that it answered a lot of questions that I had. And I was even able to get some answers for some medical things that I'd had questions about. And even the way uh, my daughter, we always say that she got our recessive genes because she has this like green eyes and lighter complexion skin and lighter hair. And so when she came out, we were like, "Oh, it'd be good to find some answers."
Mhm.
So,
Well, I have to say, if I remember correctly, the first cousin that you met was Andre Kearns. And I got all excited because if you're related to him on one side of his family, I'm related to him on the other side of the family.
oh
So we
wow.
we almost connected. I mean, Donnie and I both have deep, deep ancestry in just all over North Carolina. But so we were kind of going, we were just waiting for the penny to drop. And I know Donnie's got a reveal that she's going to talk about with you in a minute. But we were like, we're going to be related. We're going to be related. And I was the first one to go, oh, it's the wrong side of Andre's family for me because I'm on his Kumbo side of the family.
Oh, that's
Um,
very cool. Andre is amazing.
he is. I thought of
He is.
all the people for the first person whose door you knocked on was his. And I'm like, if that wasn't the perfect person for her, I don't. But then, well, we're going to get to your next cousin later because she had a lot of information for you too, the cousin in DC. What did you think when Andre Kearns rolled out and literally rolled out that scroll of a family tree telling you, this is your family, girl?
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And one of the things that always stands out to me about that first meeting is when he talked about how our family started this school in Mecklenburg County, and it was one of the first school for free blacks. And it just fit in line with so much of my own professional and personal goals. And I'm just putting this all together thinking, wow. And a funny thing about Andre is our producer told us they wanted us to meet a immediate relative that first day. But he said there was no way I could pass up Andre. There's no way. So he kind of got Andre in for that first day. But I mean, it was a great first day.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
kudos to Andre because he is, legitimately a nationally recognized African American researcher. So I
Yes.
can imagine they were very, very keen to get him on. But when you realized that, in terms of Mecklenburg and, the first school for people of color, did that give you a sense of pride? Even though you didn't know how you fit into the family story, did that still give you a sense of pride?
Oh, absolutely. And it made me question a lot of we talk a lot about how nature versus nurture and how it's a little of both, but I do feel like that instruction and training and coaching, those kinds of things are in my genes, especially now that I know so much about my family history, that this was just something I was meant to do with my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So didn't you have an aunt who was a high tower?
Yes, Omega,
That's
Omega
that,
Hightower.
that's me. That's my side. Yeah.
Really?
It's a small world. For
Yeah.
African Americans, it is a small,
It really
small
is.
world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my side of the family. God rest her soul. My cousin Sheila Hightower Allen. She is very much in she was very much involved in researching, and she even paid for people to get their DNA tests done, and she was just an awesome woman. And Omega is on her tree, and
Wow.
Sheila is my mother's second, third, and fourth cousin.
Whereas for
long,
me,
long
they're just
story.
they're relations via marriage for me. So they're not blood relatives, but relations via marriage.
Yeah.
Oh, that is very cool.
So when
Yeah,
it
so
comes
you
to
and
Africa,
I are cousins.
Yes.
yes. So when it comes to African Americans, you can forget 6 degrees of separation. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
say we halved that. It's like 3 degrees of separation.
I say
That's
one,
right.
depending on where you from.
Where you're from, this is true.
I say one. So some of my, one of the things that what made us come to season 6, because we were very focused on season 6, and what made us come to season 6 was the emotion. Um, I have to admit, every single day, every Sunday, I was crying, I was bawling. And between you and Ray, I think y'all was gonna kill me. I swear, I think y'all was gonna kill me. Because when you found out about your mom, first, the way you handled that was beautiful. And it was almost like you weren't sure how to deal with it. But then you turned around and you just was able to ask the necessary questions, and then you finally broke. And learning about your sister, how what was really going through your mind when you was dealing with all of that?
Yeah, so I assumed that day that I was gonna meet a cousin or someone because I'd met some pretty big people so far. So I thought they're gonna make today like a cousin day. And then when my sister came out, I saw her and she told me she was my sister, and I felt like everything that I had been thinking about since childhood and hoping for since childhood was just right in front of me. And she kept using past tense when she would talk about our mom. And again, this was a situation where the producers let things happen organically. That conversation that we had outside of the home was never supposed to happen. That was supposed to happen inside. But I'm the kind of person where if I have a question, I'm just going to ask it. I'm not going to wait for that. So I asked her some follow-up questions about our mom, and I did feel a little conflicted in that moment because I certainly wanted to grieve our mother and not having the chance to meet her, but I wanted to make sure that to some extent I could provide some more than comfort to my sister because I hadn't known what she must have gone through losing a mother that was present with her at 5 years old and so early. So, I mean, there were some conflicting feelings there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And at least in that way, I mean, it was really sad and it was really tragic. In a way, what was it like? Because you had just so many hypotheses about why you were put up for adoption, why your sister wasn't, why they weren't. Because there's a whole story that we're going to get into about, your family, your maternal family did try to adopt you, but for whatever reason they couldn't. So you had all of these hypotheses about why you were put up for adoption, and to finally get those answers, like the real answers, what kind of catharsis did that give you?
So I'm not sure if I ever because the people that really could have answered that they had all passed away. My maternal grandmother and my mother, because my father wasn't involved in the decision, and only one other family member even knew that my mother was pregnant at the time. So I don't know if I really felt resolved about that part of it until maybe months after the show had ended because I think at a certain point, especially when family members pass on, you have to kind of come to terms with not being able to get every single question answered.
Mm,
And I got enough to know that it was just a decision that my grandmother felt was necessary for my mother and my father. So I think that was helpful in answering those questions, although I did for a long time wish that I could somehow get a just a little more confirmation about that, but,
mhm. Well,
that's hard to do.
I can imagine that it would take time, because for people who are unfamiliar with the relative ratio, you guys were hopping for 10 straight days. You were constantly doing stuff or planning to do stuff for the next day. You had to get to a location, figure out where the location was, do a competition, figure out where whoever they were sending you to, you had to get there. Then you had to figure, well, is it the person that I'm with? family member, or is it my family member? You know, there was just so much to it. So I can imagine after day 10, you know, you make your way home, kind of re-engage with your own family and kind of decompress, that it would take a little while to really just kind of work through your emotions and your thoughts. I mean, so I can, like I said, I can imagine that was a lengthy process.
It was. And I kind of think of it like if you're in an airport, you're picking something up from every terminal. And then when you get on the plane, you get to your final destination, where's all this going to go? And so it takes time to sort of pack those things in and figure out a place for each of those things to go. And that's what it felt like.
So because you disappeared on your family for 10 days, you just kind of disappeared on them. Once you did get home, how did you unpack everything? How did you make it so that you're like, okay, this stuff just ended. What just happened? You know, I mean, I'm quite sure that that's where you were. You were like, oh my God, I just went through everything. You just did like around the world in 10 days. That's what you did. It was speedy. So how did you unpack that stuff?
It just I talked about all of my feelings. There was nothing that I wasn't afraid to ask someone. And therapy. I'm a proponent of therapy. I'm a strong believer in therapy. And so I would
Mm,
work through finding out because I did go through a grieving process about my mom, and it felt so weird to me because I thought, how can I be upset about someone that I had never met? But I did go through a pretty lengthy grieving process about my mother, but I was very firm with myself about allowing those feelings to come in, sitting with them, allowing it to be uncomfortable, and still, again, asking questions where I have it. Even if someone doesn't have any answers, I was determined that I was just going to keep asking questions and building relationships.
Mhm.
wow.
Which, speaking of the relationship side, I'm going to say that the people, I mean, all of the people that the contestants met seem like really genuinely lovely people. But particularly in speaking with you, just the people that you met just all seem to be really lovely, just genuinely lovely people with just compassion and empathy. And what has it been like building relationships with them?
I will say that I always felt like I hit the jackpot because you don't know who's going to be on the other side of that door and how they're going to react to suddenly having a new family member. And uh, if you remember from the show, a couple of family members said this, but I look a lot like my mother. And
Yes, you do.
so whenever I would meet people from her neighborhood that grew up with her, that was friends with her, other family members, some people would just look at me and sob because they say, oh my gosh, you look so much like your mother. And that was always, I never knew what to do with those feelings because
Mm,
uh, I felt like for some family members, it kept them away from me just for a little while until they could, I guess,
handle it.
reprocess, right?
Mm.
Until they could reprocess and handle the death of my mother again by seeing me. But I really feel embraced. I feel loved. I feel like this is an actual entire another part of my family that I never knew. So,
Yeah, I know exactly what you feel like. I know that feeling because when my cousin Camille died, her daughter is literally the spitting image of her. And
mm,
I couldn't be around her for a little while. I couldn't deal with it.
right.
And then we finally was able to be back around each other, but for a good, I'm gonna say 2 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
couldn't. Yeah, it was a minute because Camille was like my sister.
Mm,
So losing her was very, very, very difficult. And looking at her daughter was even more difficult because she was the spitting image of her. So I
right.
couldn't I couldn't deal. So I know exactly what you mean and how people kind of shied away. I talked to her on the phone, but I did not see her for a good little while. It was a lot. It was
Mhm.
definitely a lot.
So I'm going to ask Bernice Bennett's question in a minute because that's an excellent question. Um, I wanted to quickly ask you, when you did this, I bet you didn't think you were going to come away with actual family heirlooms that you can pass down to your own children. So I've already spoken about the just impressive family tree that Andre gave you on the scroll. I was privileged enough to see the royal family's family tree that's held in the archives in Britain. And Andres kind of reminded me of that because he literally, it just rolled and it just kept going and going and going. I'm like, wow, this is like the Queen of England's pedigree being rolled out. But but apart from that one, you got another one that was just, I almost cried at this one. Your newly found nephew did this amazing, and he is such a talented artist. He did this amazing kind of group family picture that he hand drew that was you, your parents, and your sister. And what was it like seeing that and actually now having that in your family?
Oh, it was surreal. I mean, because for that moment, it it was just all of us together. And that was one of the more emotional. I mean, the entire show was emotional, but I tend to be very guarded with my emotions, but that was one of the few times that I felt it. I
Yeah,
actually felt it.
I was with you. I was crying right beside you. I was. That whole season was just overwhelming because like when you went to go and see your mom's grave, that was the same time that Ray was upset about something. And then when you went to go see your mom's grave, after you guys closed your computers, Ray just broke down and he was like, "Oh my gosh, she had to go see her mother. I got this all wrong." Just thinking about it brings those tears back to my, brings chills to my arms. And it was, he was like, "I got this all wrong." You guys took this show to another level, in my opinion.
So,
Um,
Donnie, you're going to have to explain to Anitra about your sister, because Donnie was even telling me, "Listen, Brian, this series 6 is going to make you cry from episode 1." And
right.
JD getting the news about his dad, I'm like,
Right.
Donnie told me.
Hmm. So my sister, okay, so I kept trying to get my sister to watch the show. And she was like, "I'm not into stuff like that, blah, blah, no, whatever." I said, just watch the show. And she was like, "Okay." She cut the show on. She saw the first episode. She texted me in all caps, "You didn't tell me I was gonna cry the first." I said, "Yes, I did." I said, "You're gonna cry every single show." Yes, I did.
And then
She
episode
did.
2, it was Ray. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my, I'm like, it literally is going to be every single episode.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. And I think it was like that because you embodied the whole thing. You guys really took it in more. And I'm not knocking any of the seasons beforehand because all of them were had their emotional moments and times. But season 6, you guys were the ones that started showing your family the most because even like I said, I'm a guru of relative race, so I know that at the beginning they weren't showing their family, they just showed who they met.
Mhm.
It was little things like that. So with that being said, that actually takes me to another question before we get to Bernice's. um were you like, oh god, the question just left me. When you were into the show and everything was going on, how did you guys react to every time something new was going to happen, to the challenges? Because like, how did you train for the whole thing? Because did you go and did you watch the seasons beforehand, things like that?
So we watched all the seasons beforehand, and I was convinced that the day 10 was going to be what they had done before, which was running around a large city. And so we did a lot of cardio, a lot of strength work to try to prepare for day 10. And we watched all the episodes to try and prepare for just knowing how to map things. But I got to say, even with all that, I felt pretty unprepared for the entire show.
Listen, nothing in the world could prepare you for a competition where if you get the answer right, you got a donut or some nice chocolate, and if you got it wrong, you had to eat some lard.
Ah,
Nothing can prepare you for that.
Paul to this day will not eat wasabi to this day.
Paul had me crying. Like when you guys were in there, when you guys were in the car and you was rapping and you was getting it in, you was doing it, and then all of a sudden you said something outlandish. She was like, "You're losing me." Like what? It's like you had me for a moment, but then you just took it straight over there. And I was like, yeah, she did. She did. I'm, I'm telling you, you guys were awesome. But the other thing that people don't realize, those that are not familiar with the show, is that you were a part of the ending of the show. So you were racing for the actual 50,000.
Right.
How did you react to that once you realized, oh my God, we really actually made it this far?
I once we made it that far, I thought, okay, so we're gonna have a good chance at winning this. But that was until I saw the go-karts and I thought, oh, poor Paul, because I'm not a fast driver. I'm not a very extreme or adventurous person. And so I saw those go-karts and I thought, well, I'm not going to drive those fast at all. So
So you kind of knew that the game was over.
I knew. I thought maybe Paul can come through with the fastest time, but once I saw those, I thought, oh, this is over.
I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
whoever they pay to come up with this competition, they earn absolutely every cent. I mean, who came up with creepy horse? There was that charades thing that you guys had to do.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Oh, so our audience member Bernice was asking, was therapy or a therapist offered to you by the relative race team, or was that something that you chose to do after the show?
So I'd been with a therapist already, but I chose to do it after the show as well to bring in my experience with relative race into our session. So that's a good question.
Cool. Yes. But thank you very much, Bernice, for that. And while your mother has passed, um, you're still building your relationship with your dad. And what has that experience been like?
Yeah.
So it's been good. It's been good. With all of my family members, I think we're all very eager to get to know one another because we have lost a lot of time, but we're also very thoughtful about how we communicate with one another. I talk to my dad at least 4 or 5 times a week. We just had him and my stepmom had a birthday dinner for me a couple of weeks ago to celebrate my birthday, and I got a chance to meet a couple of my sisters, my stepmom's children. So that has all been really, really good. It's slow because, again, I want it to be intentional, these relationships. So, but it's good.
Cool. And as I said, Andre kind of knocked the ball out of the park on your mom's side of the family. Are
Hmm.
you researching your dad's side of the family?
I am. I am. And actually, my dad found out, he did some research because he didn't know a lot about his father's side of the family, but he actually found out that his father was Irish.
Oh,
And
wow.
right, right, which was very surprising to him. But he found a half brother as well on his father's side. So
Oh
that's all
my
been very,
God.
very cool.
So I have to ask, and again, I can imagine this would be something that would be discussed in therapy. You know, you grew up with your biological family who you love. What does it feel like to all of a sudden realize you have a
Adopted
lot of,
family.
sorry, the adopted family. Sorry about that. And but to realize that you have a fairly sizable biological family that, as you said, you're taking your time to get to know. What is it like kind of balancing those two things?
I thought that might be a problem at first because my adoptive family, very protective over me. Of course, we have just immeasurable bonds, but I let everyone know that one doesn't have anything to do with the other. One doesn't replace the other, one doesn't knock the other out. So we still have our family. Now we just have more family. And for the most part, from what I've heard and family members that I've spoken to, they're absolutely open and fine with it and celebratory. And I don't know if you saw the Where Are They Now
I
episode
did.
that
Yes, ma'am.
mhm,
Mhm.
the love really that was in that church, all of my
Hmm.
families coming together. None of that was staged or rehearsed or scripted. We didn't know who was going to show up that day. So to have everyone show up and really, again, embrace the process, embrace one another, and really, really, really get along. I have two cousins. One is on my adoptive side, and one is on my biological mother's side. And they live two houses down from each other and are almost best friends. And so having that happen has been just it's been really, really cool to watch, and I'm glad that it's worked out the way it has, which I think also speaks to timing because I don't know if there would have been space for that in any other time. So,
Mhm.
That's amazing because I was actually going to bring up the Where Are They Now. And I like the fact that you said all of this was, unscripted. You didn't know who was showing up, who wasn't showing up, and that showed in the Where Are They Now. Um, the thing is, what I want to know is, was any of it scripted during the relative race itself?
so the only parts that were guided were whenever we would send little jabs to the other team because we really were really close. And so we didn't really feel that kind of competition edge with one another. I mean, we were competitive, of course, but it wasn't in that kind of overly competitive way that sometimes it may have come through on television. So that part was guided a little, and we weren't that skilled because this was our first time, me and Paul's first time being on reality TV. So we weren't that skilled with doing OTFs and helping us articulate, oh, so this is what you mean when you say the challenge was difficult, or this might be more entertaining. If instead you say difficult, you say something else. Because especially by day, honestly, by the end of day two, we were exhausted because we had already been filming for about 4 days at that point. And these were 12, 14-hour days. And so there was plenty of times where they would say, hey, let's try and get this energy up because we would show up in front of the camera. Hey, so we're on our way.
Well, you also had really long days too, and they were really
Uh-huh.
active, and they were really active days.
Yes, yes.
And I can imagine with each relative or relatives that you were meeting along the way, you probably had some late nights just
Mhm.
chatting, just
And
finding
staying
out
up and
about it.
talking, yeah. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
Yeah, you
exactly
didn't go
right.
to sleep when you met your sister. I'm positive on that.
No, I did not.
Positive on that. You did not go to sleep that night. They probably don't even have it, but there is film of you sleeping in the car while Paul is driving. I'm positive on that. There's nothing that you can say that it's not that it didn't happen. You can't say no, Danya, that really didn't happen. Nope, you're lying. I know you went to sleep.
Hmm.
So, but so I want to tell you a little bit as far as the high tower line is concerned. Um, being related to us or to us, yeah, I can say that. The high tower line connects to this whole group of people in a place called Edgefield, South Carolina. Um, that particular area, we as in Brian and I, because Brian and I are actually cousins 8 times over. Bernice, the person that asked that question to you, is also related. They're all related to each other. So you actually on the high tower side, if you ever want to dig into that, let me know because you have thousands. Let me rephrase that: tens of thousands of family members because it's huge.
Wow.
Yeah,
and more than a few celebrities
more than
out
a
of
few
Wow.
celebrities.
out of that line.
Yeah, more than a few celebrities. I can't, I can't stress to you how many. It is a lot of celebrities that came from that area that people don't even know about.
Wow.
And you are connected to a huge, huge family, humongous. So there's more if you want to know more.
I absolutely do.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
until I tell you, and then you're gonna be like, you know what, Donya, that's all right. I'm good. I'm good.
So I'm always intrigued because again, the all four teams, all eight of you, just really seem to gel and were compassionate and empathetic with each other. I mean, do you kind of chat about meeting up, like having like get reunion barbecues and things like that?
Mhm.
We do. We had one in Atlanta right before COVID. And then whenever we went to Utah for Roots Tech 2019, and we saw Jen and JD, and they just had a reunion in Vegas in April that me and Paul, we were in the middle of selling our house, so we just couldn't make it. But they just had a reunion in Vegas, and we're planning one for one of the sands, either San Diego or San Francisco. We're not sure, but yeah, so we definitely keep in contact and talk to each other all the time.
Mhm.
San Diego is prettier than San Francisco
Ooh, okay.
Also warmer.
and warmer.
Ah,
Definitely warmer. You're an East Coast girl like me, so go.
yes.
If you went in August, you would think that it's gonna be warm. No, ma'am, it's cold.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Oh,
ma'am. It is
wow.
cold in August. It actually angered me when I was there.
Oh, wow.
Um, I needed a
Yeah.
wetsuit. I needed a wetsuit when I went swimming.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It is cold, but it's really nice in San Francisco, and I kind of missed certain things because I was angry while I was there. But one of the most no, seriously, like one of the most amazing things that I realized happened, I didn't realize it until after I got back. I was standing at the corner to go get something to eat because I was with my job. And I was standing at the corner going to get something to eat, freezing. And I had this little jacket on or whatever, and I was cold. But as I was standing there, there was something right here. It was a raindrop because I was standing in the fog. So you could see the water droplets. The most amazing thing.
Wow.
Yeah, see, it's beautiful now. But then, child, I was just looking. I said, "What is this?" I was too angry. Mm,
Now, I have to say one of the features of the show for me that has always made it a standout is the host Dan. And there's
yes.
always that segment at the end, and he I think has even said it's his favorite part of the show, where he wants to find out about the new family members that you've met and reactions, and it's great that you guys could bring those family members in on each episode. But he just generally comes across as being really invested um, in the kind of daily outcomes and you know getting you guys talking about that. And did that kind of buoy you and help you along in your journey?
It did, and he's like that in real life because we see people host and, you never really know how someone is until you meet them, but he's invited us to his home before, and he still keeps in contact with past contestants, so he's really, really a great person. He got us, hooked up whenever we had our podcast for the show, so he's really, really a great person.
I'm so excited to meet him.
He is. He's a great person.
Yeah, this is gonna be another Jane Elliott thing, Brian. I really think that I have to get my mind right because
Yeah, get your mind right and make sure you have a box of tissues next to your side because you know what you're like.
yeah. Anitra, when we did Ray and JD, because when we did them first, and I think I sent you the show,
Mhm.
but when we did Ray and JD, when I tell you, I told everybody get your tissue, because they were more emotional than you guys were. Even though
Yes.
you and Deshae, you guys had your moments and everything, there was something about Ray and JD
Mm-hmm.
that was just crushing my soul the entire time they were on there. And the closeness, like I said, I'm a guru, so I've watched every episode, every season up through season 10. I do not see any teams as close as you guys. I
Yeah.
don't see it. I
Yeah.
really don't. I'm being very honest about that. I don't think that there is any team, any none of those teams were as close as you guys were. And I want to ask you the same question that I asked them at the beginning when you first got there. Your mind was on the money, right? But as soon as you met that first person, is that when it changed? Because you guys changed earlier than the other teams did.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? Where do you think your change started to come in that you felt the reality of relative?
Honestly, I think when day one started is when things shifted for me. And when I met Andre is when they really shifted. It really turned from I I'm not as interested in the money. I want to see how many family members I can meet. Because there was a part of the show, maybe I think it was possibly day 7, where we're exhausted, we're tired, and Paul says, if you're tired, if you're feeling really overwhelmed with emotions, if you're exhausted, you say the word and we can just stop this right now, get everybody else's telephone numbers and we'll contact them that way. And I said, "No, I want to keep going. I want to see who else I can meet and talk to face to face." So, it really changed day 1. And it's
Mm,
funny because we came from the East Coast, and Nicole and Ray did too, but they got there a little earlier. So Deshae and Chris, JD and Jen, and Nicole and Ray had already been pretty well acquainted. And then me and Paul get there late, showing up just off the plane, and I didn't know really how we'd be received because really they were just sitting at the table chatting like they had known each other for years. I didn't even know because by that time we didn't know who the other team members were. So I didn't know who they were. And so they invited us over to sit at their table for lunch, and boom, just like that. We were we were all just family. And it's very strange how quickly that happened.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think JD said that Ray did some kind of prayer.
Yes.
And it was, yeah, see, y'all see her face, the whole thing. It was the prayer. It
It
was the
was,
prayer.
and this was before we started filming, before everything started. We knew that we were going on a journey
Mm-mm,
that
don't
was
do
going to
that.
be really
Mm-mm.
hard, and none of us knew what we were going to find. And we just wanted grace and mercy while we were traveling, and we wanted good outcomes for each other. And so we stood in a circle and we asked Ray to pray before we got started. And yeah, it was really beautiful.
Mhm. And you could
Wow.
genuinely tell that you guys were there for each other. I mean, people were crying, like I said, when people were talking about, well, unfortunately, I can't meet this parent because they passed, or I can't meet that parent because they were passed. And you could tell the concern and the empathy and the support was it wasn't for the cameras, that it really
Right.
was um was authentic. I'm going to turn it a little slightly. I wanted to ask you how, because you were kind of ping-ponging all around North Carolina, and I was just curious, were you already familiar with North Carolina, or was that a whole new experience for you?
North Carolina was very familiar to me. I've lived here all my life. And
Okay.
so even when we saw my sister, we went to Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is maybe a 15, 20 minutes away from Charlotte. And I pretty much grew up in Rock Hill too. Rock Hill was my second home. So I was very familiar with all the areas that we were traveling around. Not that that made navigation easier, of course, but
Especially as you guys had those circa 1990,
oh yeah.
pre-GPS phones. Yes.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was awful. And a surprising number of postal workers don't know the streets. And so we always
Oh,
thought we can just ask a postal worker, or we even asked a couple of officers, and they're like, oh, I don't know. That's outside of my
mm,
of where I usually am. The day that we met Valerie, day two, we asked a fireman, and he was like, not sure. And it was just down the street. And so I think that was the hardest part for us to get over, because we just depended on, oh, we can just ask someone who's used to doing routes and they're going to know exactly which direction to point us in. But it just
Wow.
wasn't that easy.
So
Wow.
Deshay was kind of lucky because I remember in one of the episodes they came across was it an EMT or an ambulance? It was something like that, and they asked, "Oh,
Yes.
where is this?" And he's like, "Oh, take a right, take a left, take a
Yeah.
right."
I fell in love with Deshay when I saw her flip,
hmm
because Deshay and I are alike. She's a guru for relative race. That's what she
hmm
said on the show, and she was like, "Hey, yeah, I got this. I know everything, and yeah, I've written stuff down. They don't have my book,
Yeah.
all of that."
Yeah.
I remember that. So, yeah, me and Deshay are alike, but her mindset was definitely on the 50.
Right.
But the day that I saw her flip was, I think it was day 4, and she had a small breakdown.
That's right.
She had a small breakdown. She was like, "I need to meet my family," and I was like, "She just flipped."
hmm
I thought that was the one of, and I guess I'm saying this for her because she was really supposed to be on the show with us, and I present with her and her family and everything. Um, but that's when I saw her just kind of change over, and I think that was one of the reasons why I fell for just season 6 as a whole, because you guys were just there when somebody else was, something really wasn't working right. You guys were there for them, and I, again, not knocking any of the other seasons, it is not the same. It I think there was only one season and one person who was like y'all, and that was season 2, and it was the Team Black, and he was just completely so gone that he looked dead into the camera and he was like, "Yeah, relative race is real." Because he had found his father, but he didn't
Right.
want to share that with anybody right away. So he was like, "Just know that it's real," and it hit him completely. Nobody else ever carried like that until you guys, and I just love season 6. I love you guys. I do.
Thank you. I think we all went in with this idea of we're going to be present, but we're going to be who we are.
Yeah,
And how you saw each of us, that's honestly how we all are in real life.
yeah, yeah,
And again, I have to give kudos to all of the teams and all of the family members that they found, because not everyone wants to put their family business out there. And I'm thinking about the newly discovered cousins and aunties and uncles and surviving parents. But particularly for African Americans, we don't like
That's right.
generally putting our business out in public. So, from your perspective and from their perspective, what was that journey like? Because I mean, you can't get more public with your business than relative race.
Mhm.
that's true.
Mhm. That was hard. I honestly don't know if I would have done it, or if I would have been as eager to do it if it were on, say, ABC or NBC, because I just didn't know what what to expect. Um, there were some family members who didn't even know about me until relative race called. So there were some family members who declined to be on the show that I met later, and they just said, it was just kind of hard to do that, and we just didn't want to, we weren't ready yet. And I
Hmm.
understand that, because that's a pretty big ask, especially to have people, because everybody, I think there was just one, we didn't stay with Auntie O, and there was an Airbnb for my sister, but everyone else, we stayed in their home. And that's a pretty big ask to have someone
Right.
newly related stay in your home, eat your food, because most everybody cooked for us. And that was pretty difficult, but everybody was really, really open.
True, I guess I hadn't really thought about that. You guys did stay in people's homes, so you were kind of getting a taste of what family life with them was going to be like,
Right.
which is kind of cruel because you were ripped away from them first thing in the morning. Like I just got the
It was very early, yes.
That's a text. Man said leave. We gotta go.
and you guys
So
did not. None of you guys, none of the teams played on that. Where they're like, oh, the protection teams texted, right? Put your coffee down. If you haven't finished your eggs, whatever, we gotta go.
put it in a bag. Let's get out of here. But that's another question. When you got those texts like that and you had to leave, was it hard to leave your sister? I know it was so hard to leave your sister.
Absolutely. It was so hard. It was just really, really hard. She's the first person I contacted when I got my phone back. So it was really hard to leave her.
Because again, for those who aren't familiar with the show or haven't started watching it yet, this is a timed competition. That's how they work out in every episode who's first, second, third, and who's going to get voted, kind of voted off the journey after a certain point. So every second literally count. Because I think in some instances, it was like 2 minutes decided which team was going to leave and which team was
That's
going
right.
to stay.
That's right.
So I got one more question for you. How do you feel about the fact now in the newer seasons, especially I think it started season 10, they have they got smartphones.
I I don't think that makes it easier.
Okay.
I don't really think that makes it easier. Uh, the only the only thing that I wish we were able to have in our season was, there's been, and I don't remember which season this is. Maybe this was 9, maybe 9. But relatives were able to write letters of encouragement to the
Oh.
contestants, and that would have been cool to have on the road, is like just a little boost of motivation. But yeah, but I don't think the smartphones will necessarily make it easier, because they have a way at Relative Race, when they make something easier, they just amp up the challenge in another way. So
Mhm.
Oh my God.
And let's face it, I mean, if you're overly reliant on that technology, mobile phones don't work everywhere. There are parts of
right.
Virginia, Southwest Virginia, where you
That's
can't
true.
get a signal.
Hmm.
That's
And
true. That's very true.
but yeah, watching you guys work with maps, just the old-fashioned kind of navigation, part of my heart went out for you, but I was also kind of giggling, going, "Yeah, I remember back in the day, and that's when we had to get to A to B."
No,
Yep.
that no funny part was them taking the pictures. That it was like, hold it right here. Just stay there. Don't move. Now I'm gonna jump behind you. And I'm like, good Lord. Because I approached Brian to go on the show with me. I actually did. But now that I think about it, first of all, I'm too old. My knees are bad. Even though I'm not too old for the show, my
Right.
knees, my knees are bad. I'm not gonna be crawling around in no ball, in no big hamster ball, walking around. It's not gonna happen for the kid. So, but I would love to be somebody's person that they find.
Hmm.
I just would love, love, love that.
Me
So,
too, because I think it was season 2, someone from Relative Race did reach out to me on Ancestry,
Oh
saying that
wow.
you have a DNA match. Would you be interested? I mean, I did a little research because, like you, I was like, I've never heard of this show before. Who are these people? Is it a scam? But I quickly figured out that it was legitimate and for real. And I did respond saying, "Oh, I'd love to," but I didn't hear. So
yeah, I'm there. It's exciting. But I want to thank you for being on the show and don't hang up. Stay on the show.
Thank you both.
Stay. Yeah, I do. Don't hang up. But I do want to let everybody know that, again, like Brian said, on Saturday, we will be talking with the creators of Relative Race, the lead genealogist of Relative Race, and the general manager of Relative Race. This will be a 90-minute show, guys. So for those that be like, oh my God, this ended too fast. This one's not going to end as fast. And I'm
And
excited for it.
and for all of you relative race gurus out there, please come with your questions. As soon as we post the promo for it, you know, where we post them all, if you have questions, if you really want to know how this kind of a show works, if you have different questions about it, please, please post them.
Yes, Lacrissa, that is you. So then Lacrissa Sims is one of our regulars, and she's always like, "Oh my God, the show ended too soon." So this show,
So,
next week's show, will be in the 90-minute show.
so we have reached that magic time.
Yes.
Anitra, thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to chatting with you some more in the green room. Thank you everyone who's joined us and spent the last hour with us, wherever or however you've watched us. You know, we always appreciate you. And it's just been a joy. So until Saturday, I was almost going to say until Sunday. So until Saturday at 4 p.m. in all of our usual places, this has been Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams, and you guys have an awesome and great day. Anitra, don't hang up. Bye, guys.
Bye.